Imagine waking up and realizing the biggest airline in your city, the literal engine of your local economy, is just gone. That's the exact nightmare Fort Lauderdale stared down when Spirit Airlines spiraled into bankruptcy. It should have left this massive, devastating economic crater, but instead, it triggered what is honestly one of the most ruthless, calculated corporate power grabs we've seen in modern aviation history. Stick with me, because by the end of this explainer, I'm going to show you the exact assets JetBlue is trying to pull straight off the bankruptcy auction block to finish this absolute conquest.
You see, for decades, Spirit wasn't just some tenant renting space. They were Broward County's hometown airline. So the second they hit that wind-down phase in New York bankruptcy court, the local panic was very, very real. Local leaders treat this airport as a massive economic engine, right up there with the seaport and the convention centers. You lose your top carrier, you choke off passenger choice, you threaten jobs, and you essentially stall regional development. But a vacuum in the aviation business never stays empty for long. Where everyone else saw a catastrophic disaster, JetBlue saw a once-in-a-decade opening.
And JetBlue didn't just dip their toes in to test the waters. They flooded the zone. 130. That is the number of daily flights JetBlue is now firing off to over 55 nonstop destinations out of Fort Lauderdale. It's literally the largest schedule they have ever run in their 26-year history at this airport. But get this, 130 is just the floor. In exactly 60 seconds, I'll reveal JetBlue's ultimate 150-flight roadmap that's going to completely rewire north-south transit in the Americas. But first, we have to look at how they staked this claim so incredibly fast.
Which brings us to part one of their strategy. Let's call it the Thursday Blitz, marking a staggering 75% year-over-year operational growth. This was definitely not your standard polite ribbon-cutting ceremony. This was a ruthless territorial claim. In a single day, they fired up 8 heavy-hitter routes: Baltimore, Charlotte, Cleveland, Nashville, Detroit, Houston, Chicago, and Ponce. They basically carpet-bombed the schedule with this shock-and-awe tactic to guarantee absolutely no other low-cost carrier could swoop in and steal Spirit's lunch. Practically overnight, JetBlue flipped from being a welcome guest at this airport to acting like they own the place. But look, if you want to be the landlord, you've got to control the physical real estate. JetBlue is currently pushing to control up to 30 gates by executing what you could call a split-brain strategy. First, they hold their traditional domestic stronghold over in Terminal 3. Then, step 2, they cross enemy lines and seize Spirit's old territory in Terminal 4, which houses the absolutely vital U.S. Customs Station. By splitting their operations like this, they lock down a massive physical footprint that effectively suffocates any competitor trying to find a place to park their planes.
Now you might be wondering, why go this hard in Fort Lauderdale instead of the massive global hub just down the road in Miami? Well, it all comes down to a hidden pricing war. Miami International charges higher operating fees, and guess who pays for that? You, the passenger. By leveraging Fort Lauderdale's significantly lower fees, JetBlue is perfectly threading the needle here. They can offer a low-cost, high-value ticket while aggressively expanding their high-end premium mint service. I'm going to show you exactly how they plan to financially survive this broader industry bloodbath in just a minute, but this domestic fortress is actually just the foundation for a much bigger global ambition.
That leads us straight into Section 2, building the America's super hub for north-south transit.
Because JetBlue isn't just backfilling a few domestic gaps. They are actively pivoting this entire airport to capture the incredibly lucrative Caribbean and Latin American transit market that Spirit used to dominate. Here's that 150-flight roadmap coming to life. Domestically, they're rolling out routes to Indianapolis, San Diego, and Columbus. But internationally, they are pushing deep into Barranquilla, Cali, and even Caracas. They are systematically transplanting every single vital organ Spirit used to provide. But let's be real, expanding this aggressively in today's unpredictable market is a massive, massive financial gamble.
The aviation industry is staring down a brutal economic storm right now. JetBlue CEO Joanna Girardi put it bluntly, saying they are planning for a tough couple of years. But the crucial second half of her statement changes the entire game. She pointed out that they have the assets and liquidity to weather it. And honestly, that is the core difference here. JetBlue is heavily capitalized. They are sitting on a mountain of cash. So while other airlines are shrinking or literally winding down in bankruptcy court, JetBlue is out there aggressively shopping. Which brings us right to the climax of the bankruptcy auction I teased at the very beginning. JetBlue is officially in the mix to acquire highly specific Spirit assets up in New York. They want the planes, the ground equipment, and those incredibly valuable takeoff slots to fuel this new super hub. But what's absolutely fascinating is what they're taking a hard pass on. They want absolutely nothing to do with Spirit's massive former headquarters in Dania Beach. JetBlue already has a 2,500-person footprint down in Broward County, so they don't want Spirit's office chairs. They just want their runway access. That 75% growth didn't just slap a Band-Aid on the airport, it completely erased the Spirit-sized hole in the market. The airport's CEO basically admitted that while losing Spirit was a huge kick to the gut, the hit ended up being incredibly short-lived. Because JetBlue stepped up with a massive 26-year-long long-term pledge, the region totally dodged an economic bullet. They essentially traded a failing, bankrupt carrier for a heavily capitalized partner that has completely rewritten the future of South Florida travel. With this 150-flight era rapidly arriving and JetBlue maintaining an absolute iron grip on the gates across two major terminals, their fortress is essentially complete. It's a sheer masterclass in seizing an opportunity while your rivals are down. But it leaves us with one highly provocative question. With this level of dominance, who else out there actually has the cash and the guts to challenge this brand new monopoly? Thanks for exploring this explainer with us, and keep your eyes on the skies.